Hello, crypto world! Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I'm going to talk about XRP, what it's doing, where it's going, and I'm going to talk about the setup that I believe is taking place that leads to the Great Fakeout. So let's get started. So to begin with, this is the macro structure that XRP follows. So it's a repetitive macro structure. This is on a day candle, so it's zoomed out. So here is a bull run, here is a decline. We see another bull run over here. We see another bull run over here. Now, these bull runs are different sizes, and that is due to the timing, height, and depth being unique every single time a fractal repeats. So the main idea repeats, the bull run in this case, but the timing, the height, and the depth, those will always be original every single time a structure repeats. So after the bull run comes a decline. We see one here, we see another one here, we see another one here. Once again, all different sizes. Actually, this decline, you can break it up into different parts, which I've done in the past, and it's a repetitive structure within this decline. After the decline comes a sideways range-bound time, which I divide into three separate fractals. There is the first fractal, which price moves up and then moves back down in part A, and then in this case, part B, where it kind of goes flat. We see that over here, where price moves up and moves down in part A, and then in part B, it goes flat. In fractal 2, there are three waves, wave A, wave B, and wave C. We see that over here, wave A, wave B, and wave C. Once again, the timing, height, and depth being unique allowed this C wave to go higher than this C wave. But actually, this decline is almost word for word, or note for note, however you want to say it. These two are very similar, these declines, which should be expected when a structure repeats. The third fractal, the essence of it is price moves up to a peak, which is part A, it then crashes, which is part B, and then it recovers, does this correction right here, and moves into the bull run. Now this third fractal, as in all of these, has repeated many times on the XRP chart. This one is sort of unique in the sense that the way it played out, it had this first wave right here, this second wave right here, and then this part that just shot up and then crashed back down. Now, I am calling this right here, this part that shoots up and crashes back down, the Great Fakeout. So we have over here completed this bounce right here, which is right here. We are now working on this bounce right here, which is over here. So we have yet to print this part of the structure. So it is my belief we are on track for this Great Fakeout. Everything that we have gone through is what we should go through. It's just been taking much longer than I initially thought it would. There is also a couple differences this time around, namely the decline that took place here, and I've gone into this in some of my other videos. So if you were to put a trend line going from here all the way up like this, let's do that real quick. Okay, so here is that line. So it starts with the decline from the C wave. Price comes down, hits this would-be trend line right here. It bounces up in the first wave, comes back down, hits it again at the end of that first wave, bounces back up, and comes back down to it in the end of the second wave. Well, we see that same thing over here, the end of the C wave. It comes down and hits that would-be trend line. It bounces up, comes back to it once again at the end of the first wave, bounces up, and comes back to it once again at the end of this second wave. Well, over here, this trend line was much closer to this bounce that takes place. This time it bounced quite a bit higher, so it had to come down quite a bit more, hence the drop being much steeper this time around. Let's remove this. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to copy this part of Fractal 3 right here and paste it over here. Let's do that. Okay, so here is that fractal, copy and pasted. Now, this is a little confusing with this blue fractal over here, but let me explain this purple one, which is the one I copy and pasted from the part of that fractal. So price moves up, it comes to a peak, it then declines. Now, the timing of this is a little different. It then moves up over here and then declines. Now, this bounce right here on the fractal is this bounce right here on the chart. This time it didn't go as low as it originally did. After this bounce, price moves up on the chart. We see that over here with the fractal, it then declines just as we see with the fractal. This part of the fractal and the chart is right here, so it kind of moves its way up to a peak here. And then the fractal calls for a decline and a move back up. Well, it did that. It just really dropped. This is where that descent to that trend line began. It really veers away from what this fractal does. Not really, mainly just the timing, height, and the depth do. But the main idea stays with it. Let me explain. So it drops here, comes back up, just like this fractal does right here. So this part right here, this decline from this peak right here down to here, if we were to copy and paste this over here, that's what this blue fractal is right here. Okay, so here we are zoomed in on an hour candle. So this part right here is this part right here. And there are some differences, such as these bounces right here that went quite high compared to what the fractal shows. However, it's not really a difference. It's just the timing, height, and depth being expressed uniquely, but it's the same basic structure at play. It even moves up. It just doesn't move up this aggressively this time. So after this decline right here comes this part of the fractal, and that is over here. So in my last video, we were talking about this part over here. Let's zoom in even more. So the fractal has these two bounces, so does the chart right here. Fractal moves up here. The chart does as well. However, it is not as aggressive as it did in the fractal. After that, it does this bounce right here, and then the chart, today's chart, dropped quite a bit right here, whereas the fractal did not. So there are some deviations here and there, the timing, the height, and the depth being unique. But overall, it accomplishes the move up and then kind of coming to a resting point here before moving up more aggressively into what I would call the first correction over here. So price after this decline moves up and does this first correction, and this is this part right here, this first correction. Now, I've had to adjust it for today's timing, height, and depth, but as you can see, it is following the basic idea. It's just taking its time, that's all. So we have this first part right here, this swoop down, this little bounce right here, which was steeper than what the fractal called for. We are now at the point where price will begin to move up. Now, I don't know how high this will go. I don't know how long any of this will take to play out. All these parts, they could play out. It's going to be unique, the timing, the height, the depth, all that. We'll have to see how it materializes, but it's going to do a correction right here. And this is following step by step the lead up to the Great Fakeout, folks. So let's zoom out here. So all this, which is over here, leads to this. This is the Great Fakeout. Now, I don't know how high this will go or how low this will go or how long this will take to play out. When this was originally printed, it took around 30 some odd days, I believe. I don't know if it'll be that same speed. It could go slower, it could go faster. We'll have to see. But as of now, everything that we have gone through has been in step with what this structure calls for. It's just going slower, and it dropped further than what we initially, or at least I initially, thought. And all that is due to the timing, height, and depth being unique. So what I want to do now is I want to compare what took place during the run-up to the Great Fakeout and the Great Fakeout itself to Bitcoin, because I believe there's another setup taking place that is, in my opinion, quite amazing. Okay, so this upper chart right here is Bitcoin, and this lower chart is XRP. So this box right here that took place in November 2020 and went all the way to December 2020, this is when the Great Fakeout takes place over here. Now, we're going to zoom in onto this part of the chart right here. So this part of the chart is run up right here before the Great Fakeout, or if you will, it is this part, or if you will, it is this part right here. This fractal right here, if we were to copy and paste it onto today's Bitcoin chart, it would look something like this. Now, I have this Fibonacci retracement, which starts at the current all-time high and goes all the way down to the trough of the most recent Bitcoin bear market. Now, you see this green line right here? That is the previous all-time high before this all-time high. It starts over here and it goes over here. So this box right here is where the Great Fakeout takes place. So this is that fractal copy and pasted on here. As you can see, it has gotten above the 702. Now, I believe it's going to pull back. I don't know where this will go to. It could go lower. It could go higher. I don't know. But eventually, it's going to move up. Now, I have this placed, this part right here, at the current all-time high, which lines up with what takes place back in November 2020 over here. So this part of the structure is where it hits the all-time high from back here. So that structure is basically copy and pasted onto today's chart and aligned with where it would meet the current all-time high for today's chart. Now, I don't know if it's going to go this high. It could go lower than this structure right here. It could go higher than this. I don't know. This is just me guessing. But I do believe there is logic to it as we are repeating history right here. I don't see any reason why it will stop following it. It most likely will continue. Now, the timing, the height, and the depth of this unrealized part is going to be different than what I may have drawn right here, but it should continue to play out. In other words, what I'm telling you is that Bitcoin, it's not going to turn below the 702 and not come back up. It may temporarily dip below it, but it's most likely going to continue. It's going to confront eventually the current all-time high, and I believe, historically speaking, Bitcoin has followed its macro structure in the bull run. It's going to continue to do that. This time is not different, but this is not a Bitcoin video. This is an XRP video. So this green line is where Bitcoin currently is at right now, or at least somewhere near there. This orange line is where XRP is currently at. So XRP has completed this little correction right here. That is this correction right here. We are now just beginning this move up right here, which is somewhere in here. So this gap right here has actually been closing, but whether it closes or not, it's amazing that we are basically repeating what took place in November 2020. But it is here where the Great Fakeout begins and it ends over here. So to put this in perspective, Bitcoin is following this same structure from November 2020. XRP is following this same structure from 2020. Both are incredibly close to each other where they were back in 2020. There is some difference. Being that they both are doing what they did back in 2020, this leads me to believe that we are on track for the Great Fakeout. Now, whether the Great Fakeout begins here or somewhere over here, we'll have to see. But so far, XRP is following step per step, as is Bitcoin from what it did in 2020. This leads me to believe that the Great Fakeout is most certainly in play. Now, there is the possibility that it could be following this fractal. Let's zoom in over here and get a better look at it. So this is the next most recent third fractal after the one that we have been following. So in this one, price moves up to a peak, which is part A. It then crashes, which is part B. It then moves up, does that small little correction right here before going into the bull run. It looks different. And the reason why it looks different is due to the timing, height, and depth. So the basic idea repeats, but the way it's expressed is unique every single time. So if we were to copy and paste this fractal onto today's chart, it would look something like this. Now, there certainly is some commonality to it with this peak right here on the fractal. We see that here on the chart. It then moves up to a point right here, both on the fractal and the chart. It then kind of does a swoop down, and then it's doing this part. So this is still something that you should be aware of. It is something that it is following. However, it is not as close as this iteration is compared to what we are doing today. But regardless, this is something that you should be aware of. You should take into your planning. And by the way, so this would move up if it was following this, and it would not come down into the Great Fakeout. It would go straight into the bull run. Now, what is the dividing point between knowing if we're following this or the other one? Well, the point where it moves up would be the same, where it consolidates would be the same. The point where it's different is the Great Fakeout moves back down, and this one would continue to move up. So that is something to be aware of. So folks, it is my belief that we have been following this very closely. Bitcoin is following what it did during that same time frame also very closely, and it is due to that close correlation to this time period that this is my primary analysis. What took place over here is something to be aware of, but it is a distant second. That's not to say that this cannot play out. It could, but this over here is by far the closer match. This is the most likely probable fractal to play out over here once again, which would include the Great Fakeout. Well, folks, I hope this video was helpful. If you found it helpful, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. I'm not a financial advisor, so this should not be considered financial advice. But if you did enjoy this type of technical analysis and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to follow up on this chart as it continues to develop. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.